it's an inline inspection system. That's a print quality inspection system, not just barcode verifications. I mean, this software gives us the capability of not only inspecting the barcodes for GS1 or ISO standards, but also checking for human readable issues and checking also for any defects on the label, things like ribbon wrinkle, dots that misfire on these thermal printers, which is very common. And this is a all-in-one solution that we offer that's actually integrated onto the ZT series printers offered by Zebra. And we have these in a variety of configurations from 600 DPI to 300 DPI, 4-inch and 6-inch units as well. So what we see here on the screen is this is the V275 software. This is the welcome screen. And of course, in this demonstration, we'll be running in simulation. But the great thing about this software is we have the capability of running one software platform for up to 4 units. So if you had multiple printers in a print room, we can connect to all 4 of those inspection systems with one PC, one server, and run that inspection. And there's obviously the server-client relationship where you could have just a server, central server for running all 4 systems, and you could remote in through multiple PCs to the software and run your inspection. So during this inspection, we're gonna go ahead and load up the demo that we have here. For each label design that you would probably have, you would have a template or recipe that's assigned to that label design. So it's unique to each SKU of label that you have. So we'll go ahead and we'll just click on demo, load up the one that we currently have. You see here on the screen now we have our label. This is just obviously a very generic label, 4x4. That we're already inspecting the barcodes that you can see here. That's what we see on the left side of the screen. We have our what we call regions, so regions of interest, ROI, for each code, and we can select these and see the information that's embedded in the code. We can even click on the grade itself, and here's where we see all the grading parameters per the ISO 15416 in this case. And on the 2D, if we click here, we can see for the ISO 15415. And as I mentioned before, we have the ability not only to inspect for ISO, but we could even change and read for the GS1 standards for the tables that you see here on the right. And with the tools across the top, we can see as we're in the Edit tab, this is where we can kind of create our recipe. We can grab other tool sets of the software and design around specific areas that we wanted to see. So in this case, if we wanted to look at the branding of the label, this is very, very popular. We can just simply draw a box around the area. And as soon as we have the region set, over here on the right, the options become available for how we can change the sensitivity settings of that given region. So in this case, we have the background, which is represented in this kind of fuchsia color, and the aqua is the foreground. And you can see here where we can change the sensitivity settings. And then, of course, we have the max dimension. This is very important, where we can change how large of a defect we would tolerate. Now, this software is pretty sensitive. We could go down to 5,000ths of an inch if we wanted. So we'll even zoom in here where we can see all the way down to the minute details of the label. We could essentially pick up dust on a label if we wanted to. That's how good the software is. Now, obviously, that'd be counterproductive to any type of production environment. So we're just going to set this up to around 2/100ths of an inch. So we'll see anything that changes in this area up to 2/100ths of an inch. And what I mean by the blemish tool here is it's essentially what's called an image subtraction tool, where it's going to look for any type of anomaly based on what we consider ideal or golden image. And that's what we see here at the bottom, where we set all our inspection around a label that we deem to be perfect and not have any defects, and we'll build our inspection off of that. Beyond that, it just as we can see here, we have the Verify 1D tool, the Verify 2D tool, blemish detection as we just set here, and then we have OCR and OCV. And Jason touched on these briefly. OCR, optical character recognition, gives us the ability to read human readable print. And then optical character verification gives us the ability to not only read the print, but also check for the print quality and also match that to some data source, whether it be something else on the label like a barcode, or to some file or something where there's a database for something like serialization and so on. So these are really valuable for checking your human readables of like lot numbers, reference numbers, GTINs, things like that, even matching those to the barcode, as I mentioned earlier. For demonstration, we'll go ahead and we'll select this one, and we're going to put it on this number down here, and we'll check for sequence. So as I zoom in, you can see now the OCR tool is set. It's reading 001. We can even go in and we can train the font to ensure that it says the right thing. We'll just, or we can train it to exact print versus what we see real time. And of course, down here, we have the ability where I mentioned earlier where we can actually match this to something. So in this case, we'll do a sequence where we're going to ensure that this is serialization, that it's going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on all the way up. And if it ever drops out of sequence, we'll catch that. This is a really good feature for, again, things like serial numbers, critical data where we know that it must say what we expect it to say. So with all that being set up, we can go ahead into a test run. So we'll jump right into the run screen. We'll start running. And this is what operators would see during a live run. So we're actually printing real time. Again, we're in simulation, but this is what operators would see. As we're printing these labels, the graphic shows you exactly what is coming out through the printer. And we can see here where label 1 was great. Everything came out fine. Label 2 was good. Label 3 looks great. 4. And then, of course, we got to stop here on 5. Software stops the printer, and again, during a live print, we have the ability to stop the printer, alert the operator through the GUI that there's an error, and then, of course, the operator could make a decision on how they want to proceed. So in this case, we had a 2D code that has failed here. Gives us the quality right here. It says threshold 1.5. We had set that per the ISO standard of a minimum 1.5. This is entirely configurable. If you want only 4.0 code, you could do that as well. And this one failed for 1.0. So we know that that's failed. In this case, we have the ability to accept. This is another configurable permission where we could assign this to an operator or not, where we wouldn't want them to just simply accept it. But for this demonstration, we have that ability. And of course, we also have a blemish defect. So remember when I set up this blemish tool around the Omron branding, there is a slight dot that misfired, and this is a good example of what we see usually, again, when those dots misfire, things like that on thermal printers. We can even zoom in and see where the error occurred. Shows it right here, shows us what it expected to see versus what it actually saw. So in this case, we'll go ahead and we'll say remove the label, and then we can continue printing. So as we continue printing, again, we keep moving along. A few more labels are printed. Everything looks good. The software makes it very easy to identify these defects real time. And again, we have another one that's pretty obvious here, showing what a barcode defect looks like, where the barcode has essentially been squished or truncated. And we can see that here. We can even click here on the actual defect itself, and it shows us, so axial non-uniformity. Again, another one of those parameters for grading 2D codes per the ISO 15415. Again, we'll remove that label. We'll continue printing. And here we go. This is the OCR read where nothing was printed at all, and it says, hey, we didn't see anything in this given area. And we can see that here where it doesn't see it or match it to the font library. Again, that's a pretty obvious defect, so we'll go ahead and remove that one. Continue printing. Of course, now it's out of sequence because it says I'm still expecting to see 11, as we can see here, and it didn't see it. So on this one, we'll go ahead and say accept because we have that permission. We say, all right, we know 11 was missing, and we'll continue printing. And again, pretty much everything you see on the software is configurable. I mean, again, it's really about finding what tools work for you as the end user, and then setting up that accordingly. This is a great one. So this is where, again, in this area here, we had a defect occur. We can see 2 here, where this is very common, like a ribbon wrinkle that you would see on a traditional print job. And again, it catches that as a defect. And it also shows the size of the defect. And I think this is important to point out. As we said earlier, we set this to 0.02 inches. A lot of times in label inspection, manual inspection especially, you know, operator A might say that this is okay. Operator B might say it's not okay. This gets rid of that ambiguity that exists sometimes. And also, we've set an actual value for what is passing and what is failing. So no more of that subjectivity between operators. And now we have that threshold that is clearly defined. So again, we'll hit remove label and we'll probably print a couple more here. Again, this is a good example of maybe something that's printed wrong. In this case, a character that's clearly not a legible character by any means. And of course, because it's looking for a sequence, it says sequence here, that's out. We'll hit stop run just for a second. We'll go into the log file here, and it's all well and good that we've identified all these errors, but what do we do with them? So obviously we have the ability to stop the printer and alert the operators. In our premium models, we even have the ability to back up and overstrike a label when there's a defect. So it's a more of an automated solution. But we also keep track of every single label that's ever passed through this inspection system. So in this case, I've opened up the log file and we can see here the time date stamp for the past run. We can see that 17 labels had been run. In this case, it shows each operator. For an end user, typically every operator would have their own username and password, and that would show us who was actually logged in. This is great for traceability, and even what PC it was ran on, and of course the template name. And if I click on this run, we can go in and we can see a nice matrix of every single label, both good and bad, and what passed through. So in this case, we can look and see the embedded information for the 1D code. We can even click here to see all the grades for that code. And we can do this for every region of interest, including the OCR, the blemish, etc. And for the bad ones, we can click here and we see a nice thumbnail of the actual graphic itself, and it shows us what it failed for. Now, beyond that, again, is a lot of times for traceability, you need some type of documentation, and we have summary reports as well. So you can see this is really good for a lot of times when printing labels. You might have a work order, operator might have a work order that tells them print X number of labels. They print off those labels, and then those labels will go with that work order downstream. This is a nice report that usually will be attached to that work order that can go downstream with the labels, and all the defective labels would also be attached with this, and that could go on to the quality department. So in this case, we look at the summary report. Again, it shows the log name, shows what template was being run, what operator was printing these, the start and stop time. So we see how long they spent printing these, how many labels were good, how many failed. And then we can go down and see a summary of each given region. Again, very useful for traceability. And then even beyond that, we have the repeat report. So if quality would like to have a report of each label that failed to detailed information, we can offer that as well. So in this case, we can click on this particular label, label number 5, see that this label failed, what time it failed. And if we scroll down again, we have the nice thumbnail showing why it failed, and even little detailed information as to what the issue is that we see here. And again, here we can see another example where there was a blemish defect, and it shows what it expected to see versus what it actually saw. And again, gives us that value that's so important for objectivity.